Alright, we are spawning just outside this little cave entrance, and it is almost dusk in the world. The sky is doing that soft purple thing. The lava pool off to the left is giving us this slow orange glow on the stone, and you can probably hear the water dripping somewhere deeper in the cave. Every once in a while there's a zombie groaning in the distance, but it's quiet enough that it just kind of feels like background noise. So tonight is going to be another really slow, really low stakes Minecraft session, while I read through your most honest stories and some Reddit-style confessions. I think this is one of those things that works best when you can just let it run, so the gameplay is going to stay super chill, while we talk about friendships, crushes, family secrets, and all the messy relationship stuff you only tell the internet at 3 AM. If you're new, I don't necessarily do crazy PvP or big jump scares here. It's more like soft Minecraft sounds plus drama in the background. Thanks again for everyone who keeps coming back to this cozy series. A lot of you tell me you put these on while you're studying, gaming, or trying to fall asleep, and I definitely keep that in mind when I'm planning the world. If this is your first time here, welcome. You're totally allowed to just use me as background noise and never look at the screen again. The whole idea is that you can tune in and out without missing some huge boss fight. In terms of what we're actually doing in game tonight, it's going to be simple. We'll start by heading into this cave, grab some iron, maybe some gold, and if we're lucky, a couple of diamonds. Then I want to slowly expand our little base near the entrance, add some cozy details like lanterns, bookshelves, maybe a tiny bedroom tucked into the wall. No big fights, no jump scares, just repetitive, satisfying stuff. Mining, smelting, placing blocks one by one. For the stories, here's how it's going to work. Each one will have a quick intro so you know what we're getting into. Then I'll read the main confession, and after that I'll give some soft commentary. I'm definitely not someone that believes I have all the answers, but I'll talk through what I'd do with that partner or that friend, and sometimes we'll have an update from the original poster. Then we'll gently shift focus back to the Minecraft for a minute, before we move on to the next story, just to reset your brain a bit. Before we dive in, go ahead and get comfortable. Let's go ahead and dim the lights, grab some water or a blanket, and maybe set this up on your second monitor or your phone off to the side. If you fall asleep, that's kind of the goal. The pacing's going to stay calm and consistent all the way through, so you don't have to worry about missing anything huge. Alright, with that, let's walk into this cave and start with the first honest confession. Alright, so as we walk in here, I'm just going to start dropping a couple torches along the wall. I like doing this slowly, 1, 2, just spaced out enough so it's not pitch black, but still kind of cozy. You'll hear the little footsteps and the torch sound in the background, and that's basically going to be our white noise while we get into this first story. I think I'll hug the right side of the cave for now. We'll do that thing where you always follow one wall so you don't get totally lost. I'm going to mine this bit of coal really quick, just so we have extra torches, and then we'll settle in. Nothing crazy is going to happen. Visually, it's just going to be slow mining. A few blocks at a time so you can kind of half watch or just close your eyes. Alright, let's go ahead and introduce the first story of the night. This one is labelled something like, "Did I ruin my oldest friendship over a secret crush?" So we're starting with a friendship and crush combo, not full nuclear drama, but still one of those things that sticks with you for years. It's from someone who's been best friends with this person since middle school, and then feelings got involved, and they did not handle it in the most honest way. Before we get into the actual post, quick reminder on how these work. These are anonymous, real stories. Some of them are pulled from confession-style threads. Some are sent in by you. And I change names and small details so nobody's doxing anybody. I don't necessarily want this to feel like we're spying on people's lives. I want it to feel like we're sitting in a quiet room, talking through stuff that could probably happen to any of us. So the core dilemma here, without spoiling anything, is this. We've got someone who lied to their best friend about a crush for years, and now that friend is dating the person they secretly liked. They're wondering if saying something now would fix it, or if it would just blow up the whole relationship circle. Have you ever had that thing where you wait too long to be honest, and suddenly the right time doesn't exist anymore? I'm definitely not someone that believes there's one perfect script for these situations, but I'll read the full post calmly first, and then share my thoughts afterward. So you don't have to keep track of every tiny detail. You can just let it play while you drift. If you fall asleep halfway through the story and wake up in the update later, that's totally fine. Let me block off this little drop here with a couple cobblestone blocks, because that looks like a place I would definitely walk into while talking. We'll tuck ourselves into this small corner of the cave, torch on the wall, safe from anything wandering in. Okay, let's get comfy right here and get into what they actually did, because the moment everything shifted in this friendship is kind of a lot. Alright, so this one is from a viewer who wanted to stay anonymous. They say, I'm 19 and I've known my best friend. We'll call him Jake since we were 13. While we read this, I'm just going to keep slowly strip mining in a straight line here. Nothing fancy, just digging forward and dropping a torch every few blocks so it stays cozy on screen. We met in middle school because we were the only two people who actually liked the group project. Since then, we've kind of been inseparable. We're in the same friend group. We game together, we send each other dumb memes at like 2 a.m. He's the person I tell pretty much everything to. Everyone jokes that we're basically an old married couple without the relationship part. The problem is, about a year ago, the without the relationship part stopped being true for me. I realised I have a crush on him. Not just a small thing either. It's like full on, I think about him when I'm falling asleep. I replay conversations in my head. I get jealous when he talks about other people. Let's go ahead and grab this little patch of coal off the wall. I'll leave the redstone for now and just keep tunneling forward. It kind of started with late night texting. We always stayed up talking, but it shifted. We went from sending memes to having these really honest 3 a.m. conversations about what we want in a partner, what scares us, stuff about our families. One night he said, I don't know what I'd do without you. And I almost typed out, then date me. I literally wrote it, stared at it, and then deleted the whole thing. A few weeks after that, we were hanging out in his room watching a movie. We were sharing a blanket, our shoulders were touching, and it felt like this perfect moment where I could just turn and say it. Instead, when he joked, people always think we're dating, I laughed and said, yeah, that would be weird. I lied straight to his face just to keep the peace. Since then, it's been this constant loop in my head. I don't want to ruin the friendship. I feel guilty every time I see him because I'm hiding this huge thing. I don't necessarily think he'd be disgusted or anything, but I'm scared he'd start pulling away. I'm definitely not someone that believes you have to confess every crush, but this feels bigger than a crush now. The part that really messed me up is the recent update. A couple weeks ago, he started dating someone. She's nice. I actually like her. Which somehow makes it worse. He texts me about how excited he is, and I hype him up. And then I cry after we hang up. This is one of those things where I don't know if I'm being selfish or just honest with myself. So that's where I'm at. Do I tell him and risk this friendship we've built over 6 years, or do I just swallow it and let him be happy? Am I a bad friend for hiding this, or should I just move on quietly and never tell him? We'll pause the strip mine right here at this little iron vein and talk about that in a second. Alright, so pausing at this iron vein, I want to say this really clearly. I don't think you're a bad friend for having feelings. You're human. Having a crush on someone you're close to is almost boringly normal. What starts to feel heavy over time isn't the feeling itself, it's the hiding and the little knots of guilt that build up every time you smile and say you're so happy, while your stomach drops a bit. Let's go ahead and grab this iron, and I'll throw it into the furnace back at the little cave base. This is kind of how emotions work too. Having them is like mining the ore. What you do with them after, how you smelt them down into actions or words, that's where it gets tricky. I'm definitely not someone that believes every private thought has to be shared. There's a big difference between having a private inner world and actively lying. Not telling your friend, hey, I like you, is one thing. Telling him, I would never see you that way. That'd be so weird. While secretly hoping his relationship fails, that starts to feel sticky. It's not cartoon villain behaviour, but it does create this weird double life where you're playing the supportive friend and the disappointed, almost partner at the same time. I'll organise this chest while we talk about that. We'll put ores on the top row, random blocks in the middle, and tools on the bottom. Nice and simple. For me, with friendships and relationships, my philosophy is kind of similar. I value honesty, but I don't necessarily think every feeling automatically deserves a conversation. If telling the truth would only serve to dump your anxiety on the other person, and there's nothing they can reasonably do with it, sometimes that's just you trying to offload guilt. The power dynamic matters a lot here. Is your friend coming to you for emotional support about this new partner? Are you the late night talk me through this fight we had person while you're quietly in love with him? That's where it starts to feel a little unfair to you. You're basically doing unpaid emotional labour for a relationship that's hurting you. Nothing exploded. But it also doesn't feel resolved. Let's craft a couple more pickaxes, because we're probably going to keep digging through this later. This is one of those things where the real question isn't am I a bad friend, so much as am I being a good friend to myself. Self-respect and boundaries can look like a few different options. Taking some distance, gently stepping back from being his relationship therapist, or, in some cases, choosing to be honest, knowing it might change the friendship. And the update you sent with this story, it kind of shows which direction you ended up going. I want to read that, but before we do, I want you to really think about which option you would have picked in this cave with us, before you know how it actually plays out. Alright, before we jump into what you actually decided with that friend situation, let's go ahead and just walk back to the little base and breathe for a second. I'm just going to turn around here and follow this line of torches. 1, 2, 3. You can probably hear the footsteps on the stone, just that same soft sound over and over. We'll head up this staircase, not rushing, just letting the screen do its slow Minecraft thing while your brain kind of catches up. Nothing dramatic is happening. Nothing exploded. We're just going home. Here's the door. I'm going to close this one behind us and then this second one too, just to feel extra safe. Click and click. I think that's one of my favourite things about this game, honestly. You can literally shut the world out with a wooden door and a torch. Speaking of, I'm going to put one more torch in this corner because it's looking a little dark. There we go. Nice and bright, no creepers, no jump scares. While we're in here, if you've been tensing up during that story, this is a good time to just unclench your jaw a little. Maybe drop your shoulders down from your ears. If you've got water nearby, take a small sip. This video is supposed to be really gentle and not overwhelming, so we're going to keep the pacing slow on purpose. Alright, inventory time. This is one of those things that is weirdly satisfying to watch. I'm going to open this chest and just start sorting. Cobblestone can go in this bottom row, because we have way too much of it already. I don't necessarily need to be carrying 3 stacks of it into a cave. Iron ore can slide up here in the top corner, coal right next to it, so smelting later is easy. Let's move the random stuff. We've got like a single piece of dirt for some reason, a spare door, and this half-broken pickaxe. Those can go into the I'll probably forget about this chest. I'm definitely not someone that believes I'll remember where I put everything, but I still label it in my head like that. Future me is not going to know where any of these extra pickaxes are. Future me is going to craft 3 more and then find this chest in like 2 hours. If you're the kind of person who always runs out of chest space, you're in good company. Look at this, we already filled another row. I think we might need a whole chest just for all this coal. It's not a bad problem to have, but it's still a problem. Before we leave this little sorting break, just notice how your body feels right now. A little calmer maybe, a little more grounded. Because when we go back to that first story in a minute, there is an update. The situation didn't just freeze where we left it. Your friend eventually had to pick a lane and you did too. We'll talk about what actually happened. But for now, we're just going to listen to the chest close, step outside, and quietly head back toward that conversation. Okay, so a few weeks later, they posted an update. Same username, same sleepy vibe, just titled something like, Small update on the 2 a.m. confession. So we're back in that same friendship, but now we're seeing what actually happened after the call ended and real life kind of caught up. While we read this, I'm just going to peel off to the right here and start a new little mining tunnel. Nothing dramatic, just 3 blocks high, 2 blocks wide, straight line. Slow, predictable, kind of like those late texts you send when you already know you're going to say something scary. In the update, OP says things didn't explode right away. For a couple of days, the friend was just normal. Memes, quick snaps, little wider texts. But OP admits they pulled back a bit. They took longer to answer. They stopped being the first one to react to every story. It's not that they were ghosting, but they definitely weren't clinging anymore. Then it shifts. One night it's close to midnight. The friend calls. Not 2 a.m. this time, but still that kind of liminal, tired space. OP picks up, and the friend starts with, "Hey, are we okay? You've been weird." And that's one of those things where your stomach just drops, because you know the conversation you've been avoiding is here. Let's go ahead and bridge over this little lava pool while they talk. I'm going to crouch, place 1 block at a time, and just inch forward. OP says their friend's voice sounded light at first, kind of joking, but underneath it they could hear that tightness people get when they're bracing for an answer. So OP tells them, not the whole essay, not the entire Reddit post, just the core. I like you as more than a friend. I've been trying to get over it, but it's been hard. And then it goes quiet. Not hang up quiet, just that slow, heavy silence where you can hear someone breathing through your headphones. The friend eventually laughs, but it's that short, nervous laugh. They say, I kind of knew. I just didn't want to be right. They're not mean. They're not disgusted. They sound sad and a little hurt. Not hurt that OP likes them, but hurt that OP felt like they had to tell the internet first. I don't necessarily think that's unfair. It just shows how close they thought they were. OP says they talked for a while. The friend was honest. They don't feel the same way. They really value the relationship as it is, and they need some time to figure out what boundaries look like now. No yelling, no dramatic ultimatums, just 2 people trying really hard not to break something that already has a crack. Afterward, OP describes it as, we still talk, but it feels different. Messages are shorter. Plans get maybe next week a lot. OP says they feel lighter for finally saying it, but also weirdly lonely, like they opened a window and some of the warmth left. I think that's a really real way to put it. Nothing exploded, but it also didn't feel resolved. All right, I'm just going to mine around this last bit of lava, and then we'll loop back toward the base. OP ends the update, asking the sub, and kind of asking us too, was it selfish to finally say something when it might cost the friendship, or was it necessary for their own peace? If you're in that spot, what do you even owe yourself versus what you owe your friend? We'll sit with that for a second, and then we've got another story that looks at the same question from almost the opposite angle. All right, while we sit with that, I'm going to start staircasing back up toward the surface here. Just nice and slow, 1 block at a time, and I'll drop a torch every few steps so we don't get randomly jump scared by a skeleton while we talk about the comments on this one. I think if this were on Reddit, the top comments would be pretty blunt. A lot of people would probably say something like, you should have confessed way earlier, or you should have just taken this to the grave once your friend got a partner. It's a very internet kind of take. Clean, decisive, no mess. Either you shoot your shot when everyone's technically single, or you quietly move on and let the relationship do its thing. Let's go ahead and place another torch here and just listen for a second. You can almost hear that vibe in the imaginary thread, right? People calling it selfish, saying OP basically dropped an emotional bomb in the middle of someone else's happy relationship. And I don't necessarily think those people are being cruel. They're just really focused on protecting the friend from extra emotional labour they didn't ask for. But then you always get the softer, more empathetic comments too. The ones that are like, hey, carrying feelings for a close friend for years is exhausting, and it's not always obvious what the right thing is. I'm definitely not someone that believes unspoken feelings are automatically noble or automatically manipulative. This is one of those things where you can tell OP was trying not to ruin anything, and at the same time they were probably feeling like they were living half-truths every time they hung out. I think I land somewhere right in the middle. I don't see OP as a villain at all. They're not out here trying to sabotage the relationship or demand an immediate breakup. But I also think once your friend is already in a committed relationship, confessing does kind of shift the emotional burden onto them. Now they have to manage your feelings, their partner's feelings, and their own confusion, all at once. As I keep staircasing up, this is where timing and intention really matter. Was the confession meant to actually open a door like, if you ever reconsider, I'm here? Or was it just to clear OP's conscience so they could finally stop pretending? Those two things feel really different for the person on the receiving end. One invites them to imagine an alternate relationship. The other just gives context and asks for nothing. We'll put a couple more torches down and call this one a bittersweet, very human situation. If you relate to OP, it doesn't mean you're an irredeemably bad friend. It just means you're learning in real time how messy honesty can be. And the next story, that one kind of flips the script on who's carrying the secret and why. So with this one, we kind of end in that grey space. No dramatic breakup text, no big rom-com airport scene, just a friendship that shifted a little to the side. Nothing exploded. But it also didn't feel resolved, and I think that's actually how a lot of real life goes. Let's go ahead and start heading back up toward the surface while we talk about that. I'm just going to follow this little trail of torches, grab this last bit of iron, and then we'll staircase up. The story doesn't give us a clean label like we're together now or we never spoke again. It's more like they're still friends, but something invisible between them moved. Not broken, just different. I'm definitely not someone that believes every relationship, or almost relationship, has to have this super clear final chapter. In movies, you either end up married or blocked, and in reality, a lot of connections just slowly change shape. You talk a little less, or the jokes feel slightly heavier, or you both kind of know a line got crossed, but nobody wants to poke it too hard. It's uncomfortable, but it's also very human. All right, we're out of the cave now. The sound design in this game always hits me when you pop back up. It's suddenly quiet, you've got the soft wind noise, maybe a cow in the distance. The sky's doing that late evening thing, where it's not fully night. But the sun's low, and the clouds are kind of pink. You can probably see that little village over there, with the tiny specks of torchlight starting to turn on. It feels like taking a deep breath after holding it for way too long. If you're listening to this and stuck in that what if I had confessed earlier loop, I don't necessarily think the goal is to solve it like a puzzle. You can replay the moment 1,000 times, and it's still already happened. The better question is, okay, knowing how that felt, how do I want to show up next time? I catch feelings for a friend or a partner. Do you want to be more direct? Do you want to check in with yourself sooner instead of waiting until it's unbearable? Let's plant some potatoes while you think about that. We'll rehoe this row, drop a couple seeds in, and just let them do their thing. That's kind of the vibe here. You can't undig the cave, but you can decide what you're going to grow on the surface. And this is one of those things where the next story is going to feel a little different. We're shifting from secret crush energy into a different kind of honesty, more like a family secret, or maybe a low-key petty revenge situation. Still real, still messy, but the emotional flavour changes a bit. Thanks again for sending stuff that's this vulnerable. We'll feed these cows, collect a few eggs, just do the simple, repetitive Minecraft tasks for a second, and then we'll get into that next confession. All right, while those animals are doing their little circle dance, I'm going to walk over here to this tiny farm patch by the base. It's nothing crazy, just a few rows of wheat, some carrots, and I think a couple of sad potatoes that never really took off. You'll hear the little soft pop every time I break a crop, and then that quiet shuffle as I replant everything in a straight line. It's very low stakes, very we're just existing energy. I like having a story like this over something repetitive, because you kind of know exactly what's happening on screen without needing to look. I break the wheat, I replant the seeds, I miss one block, I go back for it. The water's flowing, the crops are doing that gentle rustle thing in the wind. It's the Minecraft version of folding laundry while you listen to a podcast. So, let's go ahead and get into story number 2. This one isn't about a crush or a partner. It's about a family secret that's been sitting in the background for years. We're talking hidden sibling territory, or a parent's long-term affair, or maybe a financial lie that changed the whole direction of someone's life. The person who sent this in finally decided to put it into words and hit send. They found out the truth by accident, and now they're the only one who knows. For now. Nothing exploded, but it also didn't feel resolved. It's one of those things where you can't unknow it, and you can't really look at your family the same way again. Family stories like this can feel especially heavy, because they're tied to your sense of identity and loyalty. It's not just, my partner lied about a party, it's, the people who raised me might not be who I thought they were. I'm definitely not someone that believes you have to forgive everything just because it's family, but I also know these situations are rarely simple. You've got history, obligation, sometimes money, sometimes culture all tangled together. That said, I don't necessarily want this to feel like an explosive, shouty drama moment. We're going to keep it calm and reflective. I'm just harvesting crops at a slow, predictable pace while we go through it. No jump scares, no creepers blowing up the farm mid-sentence. Just soft sounds and a pretty intense confession sharing the same space. As I finish this last row of carrots and replant them, you can kind of settle back into listening mode. If you're watching, you'll see the little green sprouts pop back into place. If you're falling asleep, you probably just hear a rhythm. Break, replant, walk, water. All right, I've got a full inventory of wheat and way too many seeds, so I'm going to just calmly walk back toward the chest room while I start reading. Thanks again for trusting me with stuff like this. Let's go ahead and get into the main post for story number 2 and see what they found out about their family that changed everything. All right, so this one is titled something like, I accidentally found my mum's secret bank account and I don't know what to do. And as I'm walking into the chest room here, I'm just going to start dropping all this wheat and seeds into these bottom chests, so my inventory isn't a disaster while we read. OP says they're in their early 20s, still living at home to save money, and their parents have always presented as this really stable, united front. Classic, we don't fight, we just talk things out kind of couple. The dad handles most of the bills, the mum works part-time, and money has always been framed as tight but manageable. Vacations were road trips, birthdays were nice but not extravagant, and any time OP asked for something big, the answer was usually, we can't afford that right now. One afternoon OP is helping their mum with her laptop because she kept getting these pop-up notifications. While they're closing things out, an email pops up from a bank OP doesn't recognise. It's a balance alert and the number is not small. We're talking tens of thousands sitting in what looks like a separate savings account under just the mum's name. OP says their stomach just dropped. Nothing exploded. But it also didn't feel resolved. They kind of froze, pretended they didn't see it, and just kept clicking around. But the whole rest of the day, they felt this pit in their stomach. On one hand, adults are allowed to have private financial stuff. On the other hand, OP has heard their parents argue about money before, with the dad getting stressed about retirement and saying things like, we have nothing extra. We're barely keeping up. It suddenly didn't line up. That night, OP couldn't let it go. They log into the shared family computer, and yeah, this is one of those things where the password was saved. They click into the bank site. While I'm just quietly moving items between these chests and crafting a couple extra pickaxes, OP is scrolling through years of statements. Regular transfers from the joint account on payday, little amounts that add up. Plus a few bigger deposits that look like tax refunds and maybe some inheritance money from OP's grandma. OP starts replaying memories. The we can't afford college help talks. The time their dad said they couldn't upgrade the old car because there's literally nothing in savings. Meanwhile, the account shows enough that, in OP's mind, could have at least eased some of that pressure. I don't necessarily think it's always wrong for a partner to have a separate account, but OP feels like this crossed into straight-up hiding. Now they're stuck. They know their mum has been hiding a significant amount of money, and it feels like a betrayal of their dad, but also like a massive invasion of privacy on their part. Do they confront their mum privately and admit they snooped? Do they tell their dad and blow everything up? Or do they pretend they never saw it and just carry this secret around. OP ends by asking the subreddit, are they obligated to tell the other parent, or is that meddling in a relationship they don't fully understand, even if staying quiet feels morally wrong? And the part that really got me is what they say they found when they scrolled all the way back to the very first deposit. That first deposit lines up almost exactly with when OP's parents bought their house, which just makes it feel even heavier, right? Because now you're not just holding some random secret. You're kind of sitting in the middle of the whole foundation of their relationship. All right, being put in that spot by a parent is brutal. You didn't ask to know this, you can't unknow it. And suddenly every normal family moment has this extra layer. You're watching them cook dinner or talk about retirement and thinking, I know something you don't. And it doesn't feel powerful. It just feels sick in your stomach. Let's go ahead and dig this hallway out a bit while we talk about the difference between a secret and something that's actually harmful. Because not every private money thing is automatically evil. Some people have like a little personal savings account their partner doesn't know every detail of, or they're putting aside cash to leave a bad job, and that's more about privacy and autonomy. It might still be a conversation they should have, but it's not on the same level as, secret gambling debt. What OP's describing sounds closer to that second category. Hidden debts, accounts the other parent thinks are joint but aren't, money that was supposed to go toward the house, or kids quietly funneled somewhere else. That's not just my business, my choice. That's actively changing the other person's life without their consent. I'm definitely not someone that believes every surprise or every tiny stash of cash is a moral failure. But if the hidden money starts to touch basic safety, housing, long-term security, that's where the responsibility piece shifts. If your mum could literally lose the house one day because of this, that hits different than your dad having a small rainy day fund he's embarrassed about. Let me put a couple torches down in here because it's getting dark, and this is one of those things where you really don't want creepers spawning behind you. Same vibe emotionally. When you carry this alone, it kind of eats at you from both sides. You might start resenting the parent who's hiding stuff, even if they've otherwise been good to you. And around the parent in the dark, you can start to feel fake, like you're acting in a play they don't know they're in. Nothing explodes. But it also doesn't feel resolved. And the wild part is, OP isn't the one who created the problem, but they're the one lying awake at 3 a.m, trying to decide if they're a bad person either way. I don't necessarily think there is a perfect answer here. Telling could blow everything up. Staying quiet could mean watching someone you love get blindsided later. So I think the real move is, you shouldn't have to be the only judge. Talking to a therapist, a trusted adult, even just an older sibling or aunt, can spread that weight out a bit. You deserve support and perspective, not to be the sole moral referee of your parents' relationship. And speaking of weight, we're about to move into an even messier family secret from one of you who wrote in. So let me just finish this room and we'll get into that next story. All right, I think this is a good moment to slow everything way down. No new drama for a second, no new secret, just this little stone box that we've been ignoring. Let's go ahead and actually turn this into a real room instead of a prison cell. Right now it's literally cobblestone, torch, chest. That's it. So I'm going to carve out this back wall by 2 blocks just to give us a tiny nook. We don't need anything crazy. Just enough space for a bed, maybe a window and some small decorations. Nothing explodes. But it also doesn't feel resolved, and that kind of matches where that last story left us emotionally. I'll start with the bed. I'm thinking we go with a simple white bed because it blends in and doesn't pull focus if you're half asleep watching this. I'm going to place it sideways against this wall, so when you wake up in-game, you're facing the rest of the base. 1, 2, there we go. Just that one thing already makes it feel less like a cave and more like a bedroom. Next, I'll put a little crafting table and a single chest at the foot of the bed, almost like a nightstand. I don't necessarily need it here functionally, but visually it's cozy. Then I'll grab some sticks and leather and craft a couple of item frames. We'll hang one above the bed with a flower in it, and maybe one near the door with a little tool, like a pickaxe, just to make it feel lived in. Let's go ahead and add a painting on this side wall. I'm going to spam it until we get a smaller one. The giant ones are fun, but they're kind of chaotic when you're trying to fall asleep. Okay, that one's nice. Just a tiny splash of colour. Now I want some natural light. I'm going to dig up and make a skinny skylight. Just a 1x2 hole and put glass over it. During the Minecraft day, it'll give this soft glow, and at night you'll see the stars if you're still awake. If you're not, it's just predictable light patterns on the screen while you listen. This is one of those things I really like about doing these videos in Minecraft. We can talk about really heavy topics or read these big family secrets, but visually you're looking at something safe and repetitive. Blocks go down, blocks get broken, the sounds are always the same. It's kind of like built-in background noise, while your brain processes everything. I'm definitely not someone that believes you have to confront every feeling the second you hear a story. Sometimes it's okay to just watch a room slowly come together and let your thoughts wander. If you're drifting off, you can just follow the rhythm of placing a flower pot here, a lantern there, maybe a little potted cactus on this shelf. We'll hear how the original poster handled that secret, or we might pivot into a slightly lighter story next, something a bit more Reddit drama and a bit less life-altering. No rush though. I'll finish tidying this corner, maybe add one more window, and then we'll ease into the next part together. Alright, let's slide this last little flower pot in, and then we'll get into the part everyone was kind of waiting for. The original poster did not just sit on this forever. A month later, after living with that knot in the stomach feeling, they finally decided they couldn't keep it to themselves anymore. So picture this with the Minecraft sounds in the back. It's a Tuesday night, nothing dramatic. OP's in the kitchen, there are dishes in the sink that we'll get to later. The TV is murmuring some crime show from the living room, and the parent with the secret account is half watching, half scrolling on their phone. Very normal, very boring, which is exactly why this kind of conversation always feels so weird. Nothing exploded, but it also didn't feel calm. OP says they didn't plan a speech. They were rinsing a plate, staring at this one stubborn bit of food, and it just slipped out. They go, I know about the other account. No build-up, no soft launch, just blurt. You know that moment where the room doesn't actually get quieter, but it feels like it does. That. The parents' first reaction is denial. They laugh a little, say, what are you talking about? In that way where it's a joke, but it's not really a joke. Then OP repeats it, more specific this time, mentions the bank name, mentions the rough amount, and you can almost see the shift. Their face goes from confused to defensive, to this very still, flat look. I think a lot of you probably know that look from your own family. They don't yell, they don't confess, they just ask, where did you find that? Not, it's not what you think, not, let me explain, just straight to damage control. After a beat they tack on, you can't tell your other parent about this, they'll overreact. That part hits hard. I'm definitely not someone that believes kids should be the secret keepers between parents, even when those kids are adults. OP describes feeling instantly like they were 10 again. They're technically grown, they live on their own, they pay their own bills, but in that kitchen, with the TV buzzing in the background, they felt small. Guilty for bringing it up like they'd done something wrong, but also angry that they were the one being asked to protect the lie. It's this really uncomfortable mix. You don't want to blow up your family, but you also don't want to co-sign the sneaky behaviour. They end up making this half agreement. The parent promises they'll handle it and come clean when the time is right. Which sounds nice but is also incredibly vague. OP doesn't necessarily believe them, but they nod anyway. This is one of those things where silence feels like complicity, and speaking up also feels bad. By the end of the night, nothing is actually solved. The money is still hidden. The other parent is still in the dark. OP is now carrying the original secret and the weight of seeing that scared, cornered look on their parent's face. They walk away, wondering if they did the right thing. And the uneasy part is, that question still isn't answered. And the next part of this story, that's where someone else in the family accidentally stumbles way closer to the truth than OP ever planned. Alright, so this is one of those things where I can already kind of hear the comments section splitting in half before I even scroll, while we're just drifting across this little Minecraft lake at night, with the moon doing that shiny pixel reflection thing on the water. Let's go ahead and talk about how people usually react to a story like this. I think one big camp is going to be the very direct, tell the other parent immediately group. For them, it's simple. Cheating is cheating, lying is lying, and the partner who's in the dark deserves to know. They're going to say it doesn't matter how old OP is, it doesn't matter how messy the fallout is. The kindest thing is ripping the band-aid off. It's not about being vindictive, it's about making sure one parent isn't living in a fake relationship, while everyone else tiptoes around a secret. Then you've got the other camp that's like, Karim, this is not OP's relationship to manage, especially if they're a teenager. That side is going to focus on the power imbalance. They'll say, you're the kid here, you didn't create this mess, you shouldn't be the one detonating the family. Some of them will probably share their own stories, like, I knew about my dad's affair at 15 and telling my mum blew up my life for years. The priority for that group is protecting OP's stability more than delivering justice. As I'm talking, I'm just going to fish here for a second. It's funny how calming this is. Just cast, wait, reel in a random fish or like a leather boot. Nothing dramatic. But that's kind of the middle ground take a lot of you are probably going to lean toward. I don't necessarily think everyone will be tell or don't tell. Some people will say, encourage the cheating parent to come clean, and if they refuse, then you decide what you can live with. Others will say, you're allowed to step back from the drama, focus on your own mental health, and not be the messenger at all. I'm definitely not someone that believes the internet is useless for advice, but I do think online comments really like big, clean answers. Expose them. Go no contact, blow it up. And in real life, it's usually slower, and quieter, and way more confusing. Nothing explodes, but it also doesn't feel resolved. You might spend months just existing with a secret, talking to a therapist, maybe confiding in one safe adult, and that doesn't make for a satisfying, fiery Reddit update. If you're listening to this and you're in something similar, it's okay to get professional support. Talking to a counsellor, a school therapist, or a helpline doesn't make you weak or disloyal. It just means you're trying to navigate adult problems you didn't sign up for. And in this story, someone else is about to wander way too close to the truth, which kind of forces OP to pick a side faster than they wanted. So this is where it kind of settles, but not really. Nothing explodes. But it also doesn't feel resolved. OP basically ends up living with this half-truth world. The dad knows they know something. The mum knows something's off. The affair partner is still this shadow in the background. And life just keeps going. They still eat dinner together. They still do holidays. There's no dramatic family summit. No, we're getting divorced announcement. Just a new layer of tension sitting on top of all the old tension. Alright, I'm going to start stretching the base out this way while we talk about that. Let's go ahead and put a little walkway here, and then maybe a tower. Because this is one of those things where, in real life, you sometimes have to build around the problem instead of through it. I think a lot of us who grew up around messy relationships really want that big fix. You want to be the one who finally forces the truth out, or gets your parents into therapy, or makes everyone sit down and talk. I'm definitely not someone that believes kids should just stay in their lane and never say anything. But there's a point where you realise, okay, they're adults, and they're choosing this. You can't architect their relationship for them. So instead you start architecting your own. While I'm adding this new wing to the base, think of OP doing the same thing in their actual life. New routines, new values, new boundaries. Maybe that looks like spending more time at friends' houses or planning a future where you don't repeat the same secret-keeping patterns with your own partner. Maybe it's just deciding, I'm not the referee for these two anymore. It's definitely not about cutting off all emotion. You can still love your family and also quietly step back from the role of peacekeeper. You can answer when they call, show up for birthdays, but stop investigating every weird text or half-finished argument. It's okay to say in your own head, I see what's going on and I'm choosing not to carry it. As I build this little tower up, block by block, imagine OP stacking their own stability like that. Sleep, school, work, hobbies, maybe saving money to move out. Nothing flashy, nothing overnight. Just slow, predictable progress that doesn't depend on whether mum and dad are being honest this week. And if you're listening to this and it feels a little too familiar, you're allowed to do that too. You don't have to pick a side. You don't have to be the one who knows every secret. You're allowed to say, I love you, but I'm not your therapist. And then go build your own metaphorical base, somewhere a bit quieter. All right, that was a heavier one, so we're going to give our brains a tiny break. I'm going to finish this roof, throw in a couple lanterns, and then we're shifting gears into something a little lighter. The next story is still drama, but it's more on the petty side, a tiny bit of revenge at work. So, cozy Minecraft, slightly unhinged office behaviour. Thanks again for hanging out while we build and judge people. All right, roof is done, lanterns are in, and I think my brain is ready for something a little more organised. Let's go ahead and head back down to the storage area, because this wall of random chests is actually stressing me out more than the relationship story we just read. You can see it's just like dirt next to diamonds, mob drops mixed in with food, 3 half-broken stone pickaxes in 3 different chests for no reason. This is one of those things where it's not technically hurting anything, but every time I open a chest, I feel my soul leave my body a little. So we're going to fix it. We'll do 1 row for blocks, 1 row for tools and armour, and then a whole chest just for the cursed junk I keep picking up. I'm going to start with all the cobblestone and deep slate. Just drag everything into one place and then slowly peel off the special blocks. It's kind of like decluttering your room at 2 a.m. when you can't sleep. Nothing dramatic is happening, but your brain finally gets to exhale. These slower, repetitive Minecraft sounds are really good for that, so if you're trying to fall asleep, this is the part where you can just listen to the little chest clicks and zone out. While I'm doing this, we're going to ease into story number 3, which is a petty revenge, low-stakes workplace confession. No one gets fired, no one's life is ruined. It's more like, my coworker was unbelievably lazy, and I quietly made sure everyone finally noticed. I don't necessarily love revenge when it gets really intense, but these small office justice stories are kind of satisfying. So the setup for this next one is pretty simple. We've got someone who's been picking up the slack for a coworker for months, maybe years. The coworker takes long lunches, forgets deadlines, and somehow still gets praised in meetings. Our storyteller doesn't yell, doesn't quit, doesn't go nuclear. They just rearrange a few things, follow the rules a little too closely, and suddenly the lazy coworker's whole act starts to fall apart in front of everyone. I think that's why these petty revenge posts do so well. They're dramatic enough to be interesting, but not so intense that you're lying awake afterward replaying the whole thing in your head. It's closer to that feeling of finally cleaning out your inbox or watching someone colour code a spreadsheet. You get a little justice, a little closure, and you still get to relax. All right, I'm going to tuck us into a safe spot here. Doors closed, torches down, no surprise creepers while we're reading. If you're listening in bed, you can kind of settle in with me here. Let's go ahead and open up story number 3 and see exactly how they expose this coworker without saying a single dramatic word. All right, story number 3 is called The Coworker Who Took Credit for Everything. OP says they work on a small marketing team in one of those open plan offices where you can hear every keyboard click and every fake laugh at the boss's jokes. It's them, 2 other coordinators, and then this one coworker we'll call Jenna, who has somehow made rephrasing other people's ideas slightly louder into a full-time job. The boss loves her. She laughs at his puns. She always just had a thought. That sounds weirdly like what OP said 10 minutes ago. While we read this, I'm just going to be slowly flattening out this little patch of land outside the base. Nothing fancy. Just that really straightforward, rhythmic Minecraft thing where you mine a line, step forward, mine a line, and your brain kind of turns into oatmeal. In a good way. OP says the big incident happened during a campaign project for a new client. They were the one who put together the concept, did the market research, drafted the copy, even mocked up the slide deck. Jenna's only contribution was asking if they could maybe make it pop more, which means nothing. The plan was that OP would walk the boss and the client through the deck at the weekly meeting. Day of the meeting, OP gets an email from the boss saying, "Actually, Jenna will present this one, but great work on the prep." They describe sitting in that glass conference room, watching Jenna stand up with OP's slides, OP's notes, OP's jokes in the speaker's comments, and just perform. The boss is nodding, the client is impressed, and at the end he literally says, "Fantastic job, Jenna. This is why you're such an asset." OP just kind of shrinks into their chair. I think that feeling of being erased like that hits harder than if someone just yelled at you. Nothing exploded, but it also didn't feel resolved. OP says they didn't want to be the dramatic one who stands up in the middle of the meeting like, "Actually, that's my work." They're trying to pay rent, not start a workplace war. At the same time, they're watching this pattern where Jenna keeps climbing off everyone else's effort. So OP decides on quiet, boring revenge, the kind that looks like professionalism. They start CCing the boss and the client on all project emails with lines like "per my attached draft." And here's the updated version with your feedback. They save every doc in a shared folder under their own name. They schedule check-in meetings where the calendar description literally says OP to present revised concept. It's not flashy. It's just a really obvious paper trail. Let's go ahead and clear out this last little hill here. It's oddly satisfying watching the ground slowly level out, while OP very calmly levels the social playing field. The story ends this part with OP saying performance review season is coming up, and the boss has scheduled a project highlights meeting where everyone has to present what they led this quarter. Jenna has already hinted she's going to lean heavily on that big campaign. OP just smiles because every email, every file, and the calendar invite tell a different story, and that's exactly where they leave it. Alright, so that's where the story kind of pauses, with OP just quietly sitting on this mountain of receipts while Jenna is out here rehearsing a slideshow for work she barely touched. And I want to say, having your work constantly taken like that is exhausting in a really specific way. It's not just annoying, it makes you feel like, why do I even bother trying if someone else is going to swoop in and smile for the credit? Especially if you're not naturally confrontational, it hits harder. You don't want to be the person who storms into the boss's office or sends some giant all-staff email. You probably don't want to risk being labelled as difficult or dramatic when you're just trying to be like a normal coworker who does their job. That fear alone can be so demoralising that people just quietly shrink back and let the loudest person win. While we talk about this, I'm going to do something kind of low-key in Minecraft. Let's go ahead and grab some saplings and bone meal. I'm just going to start a little tree line from the base over to the farm. Nothing fancy, just a soft path with some lanterns and maybe a couple of flowers. It's repetitive, but in a nice way. Place a block, plant a tree, take a step. It's like the visual version of slowly rebuilding your confidence. I don't necessarily see what OP did as petty revenge in the harmful sense. There's a difference between revenge that actually hurts someone's livelihood and just making sure the truth is visible. Setting up a shared drive where your name is on the original file, keeping a simple project log, or sending a brief "here's what I finished this week" email to your manager isn't sabotaging anyone. It's just making it harder for someone else to rewrite history. I'm definitely not someone that believes you have to be this cutthroat, hyper-competitive person at work. But I think in a lot of jobs, visibility is part of survival. If the environment rewards whoever looks the most essential, then documenting what you actually did isn't petty. It's protective. This is one of those things where the same action can feel spicy to the person who's been coasting, and totally reasonable to the person who's been doing the work. You can hear it in this story too. OP isn't trying to get Jenna fired. They're not spreading rumours. They're just letting the receipts sit there, like these trees were lining up. Quiet, obvious, and hard to ignore once you walk the path. And the fun part is, we're clearly heading toward a moment where Jenna walks into that project highlights meeting, ready to do her usual thing, and it just doesn't land. No meltdown, no huge explosion. Just a slightly embarrassing, very clarifying moment where her tricks finally stop working, We'll get into that in the next part, but it's going to be a pretty cozy little dose of justice. So before we watch that little ego bubble gently deflate in the meeting, I want to let the world in here get a bit darker. Night's starting to fall in game, and this is one of those things that I actually really like about Minecraft. It's the same blocks, the same base, but the whole vibe shifts just because the sky goes purple. Alright, let's go ahead and do a slow lap around the base. I'm going to grab some torches, maybe a few fence pieces, and we'll just kind of patrol the perimeter while we talk. Nothing intense, just very checking the locks before bed energy. You can probably hear the little cricket starting up, and that soft wind sound, and then way in the distance, there's that one zombie doing his dramatic groan like he's in a soap opera. I'm going to drop a torch here on this corner, because this spot always feels a little too shadowy for my taste. Then maybe extend this fence out by a few blocks, just to keep any skeletons from wandering right up to the front door. I don't necessarily think we're in danger or anything, but it's nice to know the area around the base is well lit and kind of tucked in for the night. If you're half asleep right now and just listening to the footsteps on the grass and the little torch placement sounds, that's totally fine. I'm definitely not someone that believes you have to catch every single detail of every story for it to matter. The way these are structured, you can zone out for a bit, come back in when your brain decides to, and you'll still understand what's going on. Nothing exploded. But it also didn't feel resolved. There's a skeleton over there by that tree line, just pacing like he's on his own nighttime patrol. We're going to respect his space, and he can respect ours. I think that's a fair relationship. And if things get a little too busy out here, we'll just jog back inside and sleep to skip the night. No jump scares, no big heroic battle, just, yep, that was enough for today. I know a lot of you put these videos on for background noise while you're studying or trying to fall asleep. So if your attention is drifting in and out between the crickets, the distant zombie, and the coworker drama, that's kind of the point. It's like walking in circles around the same cozy base while different stories pass by. Alright, perimeter looks good. Torches are down, fences in place, and the mobs are keeping a respectful distance. Let's head back inside, close the door, and settle right here next to the crafting table and the bed. Nice, safe little frame. Because in the same way we just quietly set up this base to protect itself, Jenna's about to walk into a meeting she really thought she controlled and find out that everyone's finally seen what she's been doing. Alright, so it's the morning of this big quarterly review, and OP is not playing around this time. While Jenna's been busy rehearsing how she's going to present her ideas, OP's been quietly doing the Minecraft equivalent of strip mining, digging one clean tunnel of receipts. Printed emails in a neat folder, version history screenshots saved, and a shared doc open on their laptop with their name all over the early drafts. Let's go ahead and mirror that a little in game. I'm just going to toss this iron in the furnace, get it smelting, and clean up this chest situation. Nothing flashy, just sorting cobblestone, making a couple extra pickaxes, crafting some item frames. It's that slow, satisfying prep that doesn't look dramatic, but it changes how everything runs later. So they all file into the conference room. Jenna sits near the screen, already kind of angled toward the projector like she's the main character. The boss pulls up the deck that they worked on, and as soon as slide 1 appears, Jenna does her usual move. She jumps in, super confident, and starts talking through the problem, the proposal, the projected numbers, like she pulled an all-nighter alone. OP just lets her talk. They're not rolling their eyes, they're not interrupting, they're just waiting. And this is one of those things where the universe just hands you an assist. The boss frowns slightly at one of the charts and goes, "Interesting. Can you walk me through how you modelled this assumption? Specifically the retention curve after month 3. It's a really specific question. Jenna freezes for half a second. You can almost hear the Minecraft furnace in the background right here, quietly popping away, because she clearly has no idea. OP steps in, calm voice, no attitude. "I can speak to that," they say, and then they walk the boss through the exact formula, the test group, the feedback from the pilot client, all of it. And as they're explaining, they casually add, "If you scroll down in the shared doc, it's in the section I drafted on March 3rd, the one I emailed to you and Jenna for review." It's not an accusation. It's just a fact dropped gently on the table. Thanks again for the existence of email timestamps, honestly. The room goes quiet in that very particular way when no one wants to make eye contact with the person who just got caught. Jenna does this tight little laugh, tries to jump back in with, "Yeah, that's what I was going to say," but it doesn't really land. Another coworker chimes in, "Oh right, that's the doc OP shared a few weeks ago," and you can feel the shift. People are connecting dots, probably not for the first time. Back in Minecraft, we're sliding those new iron tools into a labelled chest, adding a tiny storage corner with signs so everything has a name. OP talks in the story about feeling the same way, like they'd finally labelled their own work in front of everyone. They didn't blow up Jenna's career, they didn't go scorched earth, they just calmly reclaimed their own. And I don't necessarily think every situation needs this kind of quiet trap, but in this case it worked. Their boss started looping OP directly into future emails, asking for their input first, and Jenna suddenly got a lot less bold about forgetting to credit people. OP says it wasn't some movie moment with applause. Nothing exploded, but it finally felt resolved on their side. I'm definitely not someone that believes petty revenge always fixes the deeper issue, but reclaiming your agency like that can be huge. OP ends by saying they slept better that week than they had in months, just knowing the truth was out in the open and documented. We're going to keep stacking a few more chests here, and maybe dig a little staircase down, because the next part of this story takes a turn that OP did not see coming at all. Alright, so if this were an actual Reddit post, I can already see the top comments. It would be a lot of, "OP, you are a legend," and "She's been stealing credit for years, she finally got what she deserved." People really love when a quiet pattern finally gets exposed in a way that's kind of low stakes and not cruel. Let's go ahead and do some quiet maintenance while we talk about that. I'm going to combine a couple of these pickaxes and maybe throw unbreaking on this one. This is one of those things where we're not blowing anything up in Minecraft. We're just making sure our tools are actually doing what they're supposed to do, which is kind of what OP did with their work reputation. I think a lot of you would cheer this on because it hits that really satisfying spot. The coworker isn't fired, nobody's life is ruined, but the truth is out, and the boss can't pretend not to see it anymore. It's petty, but it's also about self-respect. If someone has been quietly siphoning your work for months, you don't necessarily owe them infinite patience while they keep doing it, but there's always that smaller group in the comments that's like, "Why didn't you just talk to her directly?" And honestly, I get that too. Some people really prefer the calm, "Hey, can we talk?" I've noticed you're taking credit for my projects approach. They don't like the idea of a gotcha moment, even if it's clean and documented. They'd rather have an awkward 10-minute conversation than a long, subtle setup. I'm definitely not someone that believes one style fits everyone, though. For a lot of people, work is not a safe space for confrontation. If your coworker is tight with your boss, or you've seen people get labelled difficult for speaking up, you're probably not going to march into a meeting and call someone out by name, especially if you've been burned before, or you're in a junior role and they're basically untouchable. Let's just tidy this hallway while we're on that. I'm going to knock out this weird block, fix the floor pattern, and maybe put a lantern here. Nothing dramatic, just small changes that make it feel like my space again. Quietly maintaining your own dignity at work can look like that too. You document things, you keep emails, you make sure that when someone tries to rewrite the story, you actually have your own version. This is one of those things where the real question isn't was the revenge big enough, it's can you live with how you handled it? You don't have to escalate every conflict into a war, but you also don't have to let people walk all over you in the name of being chill. Being honest with yourself about what you're okay with and what keeps you up at night is kind of the whole theme of this video. Speaking of that, the next story pushes that line even harder because OP doesn't just quietly document things, they take it a step further that some of you are really not going to agree with. So yeah, that last one was definitely on the lighter side. Kind of that perfect petty win where nobody's life is ruined, but you still get that little second-hand sense of justice that probably made a few of you smile into your pillows. I think this is one of those things where if we stay in that energy too long, it starts to feel like we're just farming drama. So let's go ahead and step away from the base for a bit. I'm going to grab some food, maybe a spare pickaxe, and we'll just pick a direction and walk. No big objective. Just see where we end up. All right, let's head out this way. We've got these open plains right outside the cave, with that soft Minecraft grass sound under the footsteps. Couple of sheep over here, just kind of vibing. There's a little patch of yellow flowers, and way off in the distance you can see the tree line, where the forest starts. Nothing intense happening. Just really simple, predictable visuals, while we reset from the chaos of people keeping spreadsheets on their coworkers. As we walk, I want to shift the stories a bit. The next few are less about revenge and more about personal honesty. Stuff like secret crushes on a friend, weird tension in a relationship you've never said out loud, or that one thing your family did that you've never told anyone in real life. I'm definitely not someone that believes you have to share everything with the people around you, but sometimes putting it into words, even anonymously, makes it feel less heavy. We're moving into the forest now. The light gets kind of dappled through the leaves, the sound changes, and it's the same idea with the stories. Still cozy, still calm, but a little more shaded. If you're using this to fall asleep or study, you can totally let your mind wander with the landscape. You don't have to catch every single detail of every story for it to work. Do you ever just zone out and then suddenly tune back in right when something oddly specific is happening? Thanks again for letting this be that background thing for you. The nice part about having Minecraft paired with these confessions is that even if you dip in and out, there's always either a new biome to look at or a new secret someone's finally saying out loud. Nothing explodes, but it also doesn't stay surface level. And speaking of new biomes, if you look out past these trees, it looks like we've got something interesting generating. I can't tell if that's the start of a village roof, or maybe the entrance to a cave tucked into that hill, or even a different biome edge. Let's go ahead and head toward that. We'll settle in over there, maybe light it up a bit, and that's where we'll get into the next round of crushes, friendships, and those late night I've never told anyone this confessions. Oh yeah, okay, that definitely is a biome edge. We just kind of walked out of that regular green into this lighter, softer birch forest, and it already feels different. The leaves are a little paler, the trunks are white, and it's like the whole world just flipped the page into a new chapter without asking. I think that's one of my favourite things about Minecraft. You're just walking, doing your little routine, and suddenly the grass colour shifts and it feels like a quiet reset. Nothing dramatic explodes. But it also doesn't feel like the same place anymore. It's still the same world, just slightly tilted. That's kind of the energy of this next story. All right, as we wander into this birch area, I'm going to start setting up a tiny temporary spot. Let's go ahead and clear out this little patch right here, maybe flatten a few blocks, and I'll put down some torches so we're not fighting mobs while we're talking about feelings. I don't necessarily want a full base here, just a safe corner. Story number 4 is a friendship one, and it's from one of you. This person sent in a confession about ghosting a really close friend. Not like a casual classmate, not a random internet buddy, but someone who used to be their person. They didn't have a big fight, they just disappeared. And now they're sitting with that guilt, wondering if they were the villain in that relationship. I'm definitely not someone that believes friendship drama is automatically less serious than romantic stuff. In a lot of ways, friendship breakups can hit harder. Your partner leaving hurts, obviously, but we kind of expect relationships to have clear breakpoints. With friends, it's usually not one big argument. It's those slow, unanswered texts, the "sorry, I've just been busy," and then one day you realise you haven't talked in 6 months. Let me put a couple more torches along this tree line. I'll throw down a crafting table, maybe a tiny 3x3 birch hut. Nothing fancy, just enough that if night falls we're not scrambling. This is one of those things where the calm background really helps, because the story itself is a little heavy in that quiet way. What makes this one rough is there's no real moment of closure. No, we're done, no dramatic blocking, just a fade out. And when you're the one who did the fading, it's really easy to rewrite the past to make yourself feel better. It's also really easy to do the opposite and call yourself a monster for something that might have been more complicated than that. So which is it here? Thanks again for sending these in, by the way. These late night, I've never told anyone this stories are probably my favourite thing we do on the channel. All right, we've got our tiny shelter, we've got some light, everything's calm. Let's go ahead and get into their actual post and see what really happened between them and this friend. Because there's one specific message they still think about every night. So the title of this one is basically, I ghosted my best friend and I don't know how to live with it. And while we get into it, I'm just going to keep doing this really simple thing down here. Mining in a straight line, 2 blocks tall, nothing fancy, just that slow, satisfying tunnel. They start off by saying this wasn't just a casual friend. This was their person. They texted every single day for years. Morning memes, late night rants, sending each other TikToks during work when they definitely should have been focusing. They had all the dumb inside jokes that make no sense to anyone else. Shared fandoms, same favourite coffee order, all of that. They'd even talked about maybe living together someday, or doing a big Europe trip once they had enough saved. Not in a romantic way, just that kind of intense ride or die friendship that feels like a relationship without the label. All right, then they say something shifted, but not in a dramatic, movie scene way. It was more like a slow fade where you only realise how far you drifted once you look back. Their friends started getting more negative about everything. Every message was a complaint about work, their partner, their family, random strangers. The OP says they tried to be supportive, but it started to feel like every conversation was a crisis. At the same time, OP's own mental health was tanking. Panic attacks, no energy, just surviving. They didn't necessarily blame their friend, but the friendship started to feel heavy instead of fun. So they did what a lot of us probably do. They started replying slower. First it went from instant replies to, I'll answer after work, then to I'll answer tomorrow. And then days would go by. They dodged plans saying they were busy or tired, and sometimes they were, but sometimes they just stared at the message and couldn't make themselves type anything. They kept telling themselves, I'll explain when I have the energy. I'll write a proper message when my brain is less fried. Let's go ahead and just extend this tiny shelter. A little while we talk about this, add like 3 blocks to the wall. Nothing wild. They talk a lot about the guilt and the mental gymnastics. I didn't want to hurt them by saying I outgrew the friendship. I thought maybe they'd be better off without me constantly dropping the ball. I'm definitely not someone that believes ghosting is kind, but I convinced myself it was kinder than saying, you're draining me. This is one of those things where nothing exploded, but it also didn't feel resolved. Eventually they just stopped replying at all. No big fight, no final message. The last unread text is still sitting in their phone, their friend asking, did I do something wrong? It's been years now. OP says they still think about them all the time, especially at night, and they're stuck on this question. Would reaching out now actually help? Or would it just rip open an old wound for both of them? And they kind of leave it hanging there. Which is honestly where a lot of ghosting situations live. Not in some big dramatic finale, just in this weird unfinished space where nobody really knows what to do next. All right. While we talk about this, I'm going to do something a little softer in the world. Let's go ahead and put some windows in this wall, and I'll plant a bunch of flowers around the shelter. Just make this area feel a little more cared for, because getting ghosted by a close friend really does hurt. It's not just, oh, they stopped texting. It's that it messes with your sense of reality. You replay every conversation, every joke, every late night call, trying to find the exact moment where you supposedly became too much. And I think that part deserves to be said clearly. Being on the receiving end of ghosting, especially from a long-term friend, is brutal. It makes you question your worth in a way that a clean, painful breakup usually doesn't. Hey, I can't be the friend you need right now text stings, but at least it anchors the story. Silence just leaves you floating. But I'm definitely not someone that believes ghosting is always this cold, calculated, evil move. Sometimes people really are at the end of their rope. They're burnt out, their mental health is tanking, their job or family situation is a mess, and the idea of sending one more emotionally loaded message feels impossible. Not because they don't care, but because they feel like if they open that door, they won't be able to hold themselves together. Let me put a lantern here, and maybe one by the door, just kind of lighting up the space a bit. That's the thing. Disappearing out of malice and disappearing out of overwhelm are not the same. One is, I don't value you enough to bother. The other is, I'm so underwater I literally shut down. Intent doesn't erase the impact, though. Your friend still sat there staring at that unanswered message. They still lost sleep. Both versions hurt. This is one of those things where two truths can sit next to each other. You can say, I was in a really bad place, I shut down, I didn't have the bandwidth, and at the exact same time admit, yeah, that choice probably damaged someone I cared about. Nothing exploded, but it also didn't feel resolved. So if OP does ever reach out, I don't necessarily think the move is to send a 3-page essay defending every choice they made. A simple, I'm sorry I disappeared, I know that was hurtful, you didn't do anything wrong, I was overwhelmed and handled it badly, goes a lot further. Focus less on convincing them you're a good person and more on naming their hurt, and you send it without expecting an instant reply, or forgiveness, or a perfect friendship update. You're just planting a little flower in that emotional space, saying, if you ever want to talk, the door's open, and then letting them decide what to do with it. Speaking of doors being open, the next story is about someone whose family decided to walk right through a boundary they were very clear about. Speaking of doors being open, I'm going to actually walk out of this one. Let's go ahead and leave this little cabin for a second. We've been sitting in here talking about some pretty heavy friendship stuff, so I kind of want to stretch our legs a bit and wander up into these hills. All right, I'm just going to grab a couple torches, close this door behind us, and start heading up this slope. The biome up here is really pretty. You've got that mix of soft grass, a few lonely trees, and then these random stone patches that look like the world just kind of forgot to finish loading in. From higher up you can see the cabin down there with the tiny farm next to it, and it makes the whole thing feel small in a nice way, not in a nothing matters way. This is one of those things where the walk fits the mood. We just talked about reaching out to old friends, but I think it's also true that not every friendship is supposed to last forever. Sometimes nobody was the villain. Nobody cheated, nobody screamed, nobody did some giant, unforgivable thing. You just slowly text less, you get busy, your lives go in different directions, and one day you realise you haven't talked in a year. I'm definitely not someone that believes every drift has to be fixed. Like, look at this ridgeline up here. Some hills stay connected, and some split off and become their own little islands of stone. That doesn't mean the mountain is broken, it just means the landscape changed. Friendships can be like that. You can still be grateful for who someone was to you without needing an update or a reunion or a big emotional conversation. I don't necessarily think you need to label yourself the bad guy or the victim if you were the one who ghosted or the one who got ghosted. Sometimes you just didn't have the tools at the time. Sometimes you were overwhelmed. Sometimes they were. It's not always a grand moral failing. It's just two people trying to grow in slightly different directions. If this is making you think of a specific person, try to give yourself a little compassion here. You did the best you could with what you knew then. They probably did too. You don't have to rewrite the whole relationship in your head as fake or pointless just because it ended. It mattered while it was happening. That's enough. Okay, quick Minecraft moment. This view is actually really nice. We've got a river cutting through the valley, a little patch of forest on that side, and over here there's this weird cave entrance tucked into the hill. I'm not going to dive into it yet, but I'm mentally bookmarking that. That feels like a later tonight cave. For now, I'm going to follow this little curve in the hill and look for a safe spot to dig down. Somewhere that's not directly under a gravel patch, ideally. Maybe right here, tucked into this corner with the tree above us. We'll carve out a tiny side base, place a bed, and then in the next story, the tone's going to shift just a little again. Still cozy, still very late night energy, but the family boundary stuff we're about to get into is, yeah, it's a different kind of heavy. Alright, since we've got our little side base carved into the hill, let's go ahead and actually commit to a proper staircase mine. I'm thinking we start right here, facing out toward the valley, and just dig straight down in that classic diagonal pattern. 2 blocks forward, 1 block down. Repeat. Nothing fancy, just really slow, really methodical. Very put this on in the background and forget what time it is kind of energy. I'll keep a torch in the offhand and we'll place one every 5 or 6 steps so it stays bright. It's definitely not the most efficient mine in the world, but visually it's just satisfying, watching that tunnel stretch out in front of us. And I don't necessarily want to be sprinting into some chaotic cave right now while we talk about this next thing, because the story we're about to read is a little layered. So story number 5 is a confession about living a double life online, not in the dramatic movie way, where someone has a secret second family in another country, but in the very 3 a.m. internet way. Think, extra social media account, different name, different vibe, friends and family totally in the dark. They've basically built a whole persona that only exists behind a username and a profile picture. We'll keep digging down while I set this up, and then once we hit a good level, I'll carve out a tiny room and we'll actually sit in there to read it. I think that fits the mood, right? We're literally going underground to talk about a secret identity. It's a little on the nose, but it works. The central tension in this story is interesting. They're not cheating exactly. There's no I'm secretly engaged to someone else situation. But they're definitely not being honest about who they are online, and it's starting to bleed into their real life in ways they didn't plan for. People from the secret account are bumping into people from their real world. Little overlaps, little near misses. That's where it gets messy. Online double lives can be a spectrum. Sometimes it's harmless escapism, like role-playing in a fandom server, or having a private spam account where you just overshare about your cat. And sometimes it crosses into genuinely hurtful deception, where a partner finds out you've been presenting as single, or you're talking trash about your family to strangers instead of communicating at all. This story lands somewhere in the middle. It's not cartoon villain behaviour, but it's also not nothing. Okay, we're pretty far down now, so let's open this up into a small mining room. I'll hollow out a 5x5, smooth the floor, and throw some torches in each corner so it feels like this little hidden bunker. Thanks again for sending stories like this, by the way. I'm definitely not someone that believes the internet is automatically evil, but this is one of those things where the anonymity can make it really easy to justify stuff you'd never do face to face. Alright, we're tucked away. Door on the tunnel. Torches on the walls. Perfect secret base energy. Let's go ahead and read what they actually wrote, because the way this double life started is not what you'd expect. So this one is from someone who basically built themselves a secret little personality online, and now it's bleeding into their actual relationship, which again kind of fits the whole secret base vibe we've got going underground here. I'm just going to branch this tunnel off to the left, keep it 2 blocks high, and we'll see if we hit anything fun while we read. They start, I made an anonymous account about 2 years ago. At first, it was just a place to vent about work and post my art without my coworkers or family seeing it. I love drawing, but everyone in my real life has an opinion. On this account, I could just exist. No real name, no face, no one from my city. It felt safe. Alright, that's already super relatable. I think a lot of people use the internet like that, where it's the only spot they feel like themselves without judgment. Let's go ahead and grab this redstone really quick. That's going to be nice XP later, and keep going. OP says the account slowly grew. They'd post little comics about their day, vague stuff about their partner, memes about anxiety. People started following. They made online friends. One in particular started DMing a lot. It began as art talk, then life talk, then late night, you're the only one who gets me kind of messages. OP admits they never lied exactly, but they also never mentioned they were in a long-term relationship. They write, I talk about a person I live with instead of saying my partner. I'd complain about fights in this very one-sided way. If my partner ever found the account, they'd recognise themselves instantly. I've posted about specific arguments, their job, even their hobby. but to my online friend, it probably sounded like I just had a bad roommate. We just hit some lapis in this side tunnel, by the way, which is kind of fitting because this is where it starts getting messy. Nothing exploded. But it also didn't feel resolved. The line really gets crossed when they have a big fight in real life. Their partner forgot an important date, they argued, and instead of cooling off or talking it through, OP went straight to the anonymous account and dumped everything. Screenshots of texts. A whole rant calling their partner selfish and emotionally immature. Their online friend responded like, "You deserve better. If I lived near you, I'd treat you right." OP didn't shut it down. They let the flirting happen. They let that person assume they were basically single. OP says, "On that account, I feel more like me than I do in my own house. I don't necessarily think I'm cheating, but if my partner was doing this, I'd be destroyed. I'm definitely not someone that believes venting online is always bad, but this is one of those things where I can't tell if I'm using a coping tool or just building a secret escape hatch." They end by saying they're terrified their partner will stumble on the account through a mutual follower. They're stuck between deleting everything, confessing and risking the relationship, or quietly changing how they use it and pretending it never went that far. And honestly, what would you even do in that situation? We're going to turn this tunnel one more time and then read the comments on this because people had very strong opinions about whether this counts as emotional cheating. Alright, so while we read some of these top comments, I'm going to start putting a little structure in here. Let's go ahead and turn this random tunnel into something that actually has, like, boundaries. I'm going to put a wall right here with a doorway, and then we'll label each branch so we know where everything goes. I think the first thing with this whole secret account situation is having a private space online is not automatically a bad thing. Most people need somewhere they can vent or journal or just talk without feeling like their partner, their friends, their family are all kind of looking over their shoulder. Some people use a spam Instagram, some people use Reddit, some people just have a notes app that would probably make them look insane out of context. So I'm definitely not someone that believes like, if you're in a relationship, you lose all privacy. That would be awful. You're still an individual. You're allowed to have group chats your partner isn't in. You're allowed to process your feelings before you share them. You're allowed to say, "I just need this one thing to be mine." That's this first little room I'm building here. Private, but not sketchy. Where it starts to feel different is when that private space turns into a second life. When you're talking about your relationship in a way that you know would really hurt your partner if they saw it, or you're letting people believe you're single, or flirting in a way you'd never do in front of them. It's not just privacy anymore, it's like you're quietly moving furniture out of the shared house and into a secret one. Let me put a sign here that says home tunnel and another that says off limits. That's kind of the line for me. Venting about an argument to strangers? Probably fine. Posting super intimate details about your partner's trauma, or calling them names, or telling someone, "If I was single, I'd totally date you." That starts to feel like a betrayal, even if nothing physical ever happens. This is one of those things people argue about a lot. Some will say, "It's just online, it doesn't count." And some will say, "Any emotional energy that isn't 100% on your partner is cheating." I don't necessarily agree with either extreme. To me, emotional cheating is less about a specific rule and more about patterns, secrecy, romantic or sexual tension, and choosing this other person or this account as your main place for comfort instead of your partner. Quick pattern interrupt. I'm going to block this tunnel completely. Just stone it off. No sign, no doorway. That's what full secrecy looks like. You have to ask yourself, why am I hiding this? Is it because you want a little breathing room? Or because you know deep down that if your partner saw it, they'd feel lied to? If you're the OP in a story like this, I think the most helpful question is, how would you feel if the roles were reversed? If you stumbled on your partner's secret account and saw your life laid out there, or saw them acting single, would you feel okay, or would it break something for you? That answer usually tells you whether this is just safe venting or something closer to emotional cheating. From there, it's kind of about aligning your behaviour with your own values. You can either be more transparent like, "Hey, I have this space where I vent. I don't want you reading it, but I'm not hiding that it exists. Or you can change how you use it so you're not crossing your own lines. Both of those are way better than pretending it's nothing, while your stomach is in knots every time a notification pops up. I'm going to finish labeling these tunnels and then we'll see what the top comments said about whether this counts as cheating, because people did not hold back. Alright, I've got the tunnels labelled and I'm just going to peel off into this little side passage while we pull back from that last story a bit. We've been in some pretty intense emotional lava, so let's go ahead and wander into some actual lava instead. I'm just going to dig straight for a second here, nice and slow, nothing fancy. You can probably hear the pitch of the cave sounds change a little and, yeah, there it is, that little shh and the orange glow, tiny lava pool right in front of us. My first instinct is always to back up, not panic, not sprint, just take 2 steps back and breathe for a second. This is one of those things where Minecraft kind of accidentally teaches you a good life skill. You don't have to jump in, and you don't have to run away. You can just stand here for a second and look at it. So I'm going to start by placing a couple blocks on the side, just to stop the flow. 1, 2, 3. Very gentle, very controlled, no frantic clicking. I think the sound design in this game helps a lot. You get that low rumble from the lava, and then when we bring in the water bucket, you'll hear that soft sizzle. I'm definitely not someone that believes Minecraft is like deep philosophy or anything, but it does give you these tiny metaphors whether you ask for them or not. Alright, let's place the water here on the edge so it runs over without pushing us in. There we go. That little psh is so satisfying. Lava turning into obsidian is kind of like when you finally name a feeling you've been avoiding. It's still there, it's still solid, but it's not actively burning you anymore. You didn't have to blow up your relationship or pretend everything was fine. You just slowed down and changed how you were standing next to it. I don't necessarily think every hard conversation needs to be this calm, but this is a nice reminder that you're allowed to pause. You can say, okay, that was a lot, I need a second, and mentally place a couple of blocks between you and whatever's pouring towards you. You're not ignoring it, you're just building yourself a safer little ledge. I'm going to carefully bridge over this last bit. Just a few blocks at a time. Click, click, click. Nothing dramatic. If you're watching this to fall asleep, this is your permission to just listen to the clink of the blocks and the cave ambience for a minute. No new story, no big twist, just tiny careful steps over something that used to be dangerous. Let's pick the water back up, secure the area, and drop a few torches so nothing surprises us later. Soft light, safe walkway, no loose edges. Thanks again for hanging out through the heavier stuff. The next story we get into is going to be a little more on the wholesome or at least reflective side, so once we clear this corner, we'll head back to your confessions. Alright, I think this is a good moment to start heading back up. We've been down here for a while, so let's go ahead and follow this staircase and see if I can actually find my way home without getting turned around. You know that feeling when you've been in a parking garage too long and you finally see daylight again? That's kind of what this always feels like in Minecraft. We'll just hug the right side, drop a couple more torches as we go, and you can hear the sounds start to change a little. Less lava, more of that soft cave drip, and then eventually you get the little muffled footsteps of the surface. It's definitely comforting, knowing there's a cozy base waiting at the top instead of another creeper drop. Nothing dramatic is happening, but it also feels like a reset. While we climb, story number 6 is a bit of a different vibe. This one isn't about a breakup or a wild Ater situation. It's from someone who's been doing this really small, consistent kind thing for years. Think like secretly paying for a friend's meal when they're struggling, or slipping a grocery gift card into a neighbour's mailbox, or quietly covering a co-worker's bus fare when their card gets declined. That kind of story. They've been doing this in total secret. No, look at me. No Instagram post, not even telling their partner. And now they're kind of wondering if it's weird that they actually like not being known for it. They wrote that they feel almost guilty for enjoying the anonymity, like it somehow makes the kindness less pure. I'm definitely not someone that believes every good thing has to be broadcast to be real, but I also get that question. Is it about helping people, or is it about the warm feeling you get after? And honestly, this is one of those things where both can be true. Not all honest stories have to be heavy or dramatic. Sometimes it's just about the quiet ways people are trying to be good, even if they're shy or a little awkward about it. All right, we're back at the ladder, so we're basically home. You can hear the rain a bit louder up here, and the light changes as we pop out into the base tunnel. Let's duck inside, close the door, and I'll hop into bed real quick so we can reset it to daytime. No phantoms tonight, just soft Minecraft sounds. Okay, sun's up, everything looks calm. We'll sit by the little window here, with the furnace going and the chest wall behind us, and I'll read you the main post in a more relaxed tone, because the way they describe this secret habit, and the one time someone almost caught them, kind of changes how you look at it. Alright, so while the furnace is doing its thing, I'm just going to walk around the base a little and read you their main post. I've got some potatoes cooking. We'll probably swap those out for some chicken in a second. And I'm going to start tucking some flower pots and bookshelves into this little corner, so it feels more like an actual home than a cave. They write, I don't know if this really counts as a confession, but it feels like something I can't say out loud in my real life without making it weird. I'm in my late 20s, work in a pretty normal office, nothing dramatic. But for the past year or so, I've kind of been the anonymous helper at work. It started really small. One of my co-workers kept having issues with her bus card. She'd come in late, all flustered, talking about how she miscalculated her balance again. I use the same transit system, so one day I quietly topped up her card online, just enough to get her through the week. She came in the next day confused, like, I swear I didn't add money, but it worked. And everyone joked that maybe the bus fairy helped her. I never said anything. And I really liked that feeling. No spotlight, no awkward, oh, you didn't have to conversation. Just, I knew she got home okay. Since then, it's kind of snowballed into these tiny things. I'll leave snacks in the break room when I know people are staying late. I've covered the random $5 or $10 missing when we do group takeout and someone forgets tax or tip. I've slipped a coffee gift card into the desk of a co-worker who was clearly going through it. Little stuff. Nothing life-changing, but enough that people notice something nice happened. But I keep it completely anonymous. I don't necessarily think I'm some kind of hero or anything. I'm actually really shy in person, and I hate when people make a big deal out of things. I'm definitely not someone that believes kindness has to be this performative, social media thing. At the same time, I'd be lying if I said I never feel conflicted. Sometimes I hear them trying to guess who did it, and a tiny part of me wants someone to figure it out, or at least to have one person who knows. It would be nice to have that moment of, yeah, that was me, and have them understand I'm not being weird about it. But another part of me really likes the purity of it staying a secret. No one owes me anything. No one has to feel indebted or change how they act around me. They just get a good moment in their day, and I get to quietly know I helped. So that's my little secret. While everyone's debating who the office fairy is, I'm just over here pretending I'm as surprised as they are. Am I being weird or even a little dishonest by not telling anyone? Or is it okay to just quietly be nice and never bring it up? Let's go ahead and add a couple more plants by the window while we think about that, because this is one of those things that sounds simple, but hits a lot deeper once you sit with it. Alright, so first off, no, you're not being weird. Doing kind things anonymously is actually one of my favourite kinds of kindness. There's something really beautiful about helping when nobody's watching, when you're not waiting for a thank you or a gold star or like an Employee of the Month plaque taped to the break room fridge. Let's go ahead and wander over to the animal pen while we talk about this, because this is very quiet goodness energy. I'm just going to toss some wheat to these cows, breed a couple of them, and you'll notice the game doesn't pop up a big fireworks banner that says, "Congrats, you fed the cows." They just exist a little more comfortably now. That's it. That's anonymous kindness in Minecraft form. I think sometimes people act like the only pure kindness is when you never ever want to be seen or appreciated. I'm definitely not someone that believes that. You're still a human being. It's normal to feel a tiny pull that goes, man, it would be nice if someone knew I did this. And that doesn't suddenly make the thing fake. You can want to be seen and still be genuinely caring at the exact same time. Let's plant a few more carrots by the base. Nobody on this server is going to log in and be like, wow, thank you, mysterious farmer. They'll just have food. In real life, your co-workers just have snacks. The impact is real, whether or not your name is attached to it, and your mixed feelings don't cancel that out. And for a lot of people, doing it quietly actually feels safer. This is one of those things that usually doesn't start in adulthood. It starts when you're a kid and you try to be openly kind, and people make fun of you. Maybe you were the one who brought extra pencils to class and everyone called you a try-hard. Or you tried to compliment a friend and they brushed it off or teased you. If you grew up being teased or dismissed when you showed care, of course you're going to default to these indirect background ways of helping. Quick pattern interrupt. Imagine if I suddenly put a giant neon sign over this garden that says streamer fed these cows. It would feel silly and kind of wrong in the vibe we've got going here, right? But if I casually mention later, yeah, I've been keeping the animals fed so nobody has to worry about it. That's not evil. That's just context. So no, you're not strange for enjoying anonymous kindness. And if one day you decide to tell your co-workers, hey, I've actually been the snack fairy, that doesn't magically turn it into some selfish, performative thing. It just means you let people see a part of you that was already there. We're going to circle back to that idea of being seen in the next story too, but for now I'm going to finish this little ring of flowers around the base, and then we'll move on. Alright, before we jump into the next big honesty moment, I kind of want to give our brains a little reset. We've been talking about some pretty real stuff, and this base is finally starting to look cozy, so it feels like a good time to just slow everything down for a second. I'm going to step inside here and sleep, and let's see if we can get some rain going. Minecraft rain is one of those things that people either hate or secretly use as free white noise. I'm definitely not someone that believes every sound in this game is relaxing, but the rain is up there for me. Oh, there it is. You can hear it start to patter on the roof, kind of soft at first, and then it fills in the background like static. I'm just going to stay inside the base for a bit and not really do anything intense. No caves, no creepers, just this little wooden room and the sound of the rain hitting the roof. If you're listening with headphones, you can probably hear that low, steady hiss under my voice. Nothing exploded. But it also doesn't feel empty. While that plays, let's go ahead and do some chest Tetris. These chests are like embarrassingly chaotic right now. I'm going to pull all the random blocks out of this one, move the dirt and cobblestone over here, and keep the nicer building stuff together. You'll hear a lot of soft little clicks as I move things around. It's not the most exciting gameplay, but it's weirdly satisfying. I'll craft a couple extra pickaxes and maybe a spare shovel, just so we're stocked for the last stretch of stories. I don't necessarily need this many torches, but having them lined up in the hotbar feels good. This is one of those things where the tiny bit of organisation makes the whole world feel calmer. I'm going to label this chest building, this one mob drops, and this one can be random junk, because let's be honest, there's always random junk. If you're using this to fall asleep or just to, unwind after a long day, you can treat this part as a little mental break. You don't have to follow every item I move. You can just close your eyes for a minute, listen to the rain and the inventory sounds and let your brain drift. Nothing important is happening right now. No big decisions, just rain, wood creaking and me shuffling stacks of cobblestone around. I think a lot of people use these longer videos as background noise while they study or try to fall asleep. And this is that section on purpose. You're not going to miss some massive twist if you zone out. We still have a couple more stories coming after this, including one that's a pretty big, scary, honesty moment with a partner, and another one that's more about future plans, and trying to be honest with yourself about what you actually want. For now, I'm going to step outside just for a second so you can see the rain. The sky's all grey, the flowers we just planted are kind of swaying, and the whole base looks a little softer. We'll walk to the edge of the hill, look out over the landscape, and then head right back inside where it's dry and warm. Once we're tucked back in, we'll get into that next confession. Alright, we're back inside. You can still hear that low thunder outside, kind of rolling across the sky, but in here it's just soft and muffled. It actually makes the base feel cozier, like when you were a kid and you're watching rain hit the window, but you're wrapped up in a blanket and you know you're not going anywhere. I'm going to swing the camera around and tuck us into this little corner I built earlier. We've got the fireplace, the bookshelf, the tiny storage chest that I keep saying I'll organise, and then never do. Let's go ahead and sit right here, let the rain and thunder be background noise, and get into story number 7. This one is definitely a bigger honesty moment. The person who sent this in is either about to come out, or they just did, to their family and a couple of close friends. And they're terrified. Not like, oh, I'm a bit nervous, terrified, but that deep stomach drop feeling where you're pretty sure that once you say the words out loud, you can't ever go back to how things were. They've been hiding this part of themselves for years, carefully changing pronouns in stories, laughing things off, dodging questions about partners and relationships. On the outside, everything looks fine. On the inside, it's this constant mental checklist of what you can say, what you can't say, and who already knows. I think a lot of you probably know that feeling, even if it's about something totally different. And now they're finally ready to say it out loud. But they're scared they'll lose people they love. That's the core of it. It's not just, will they be mad? It's, will my mum look at me differently? Will my best friend pull away? Will family gatherings feel weird forever? Nothing explodes. But it also doesn't feel resolved, because they're sitting in this before and after moment and trying to decide if they're brave enough to step over the line. I want to pause here for a second because this is one of those things that can be heavy. If you're listening to this while you're falling asleep, I don't necessarily want to yank your brain into full panic mode, so we're going to keep this respectful and gentle. No making it into a spectacle, no treating someone's identity like a plot twist in a TV show. Just a real person, with real fear, trying to be honest. I'm definitely not someone that believes you owe every detail of yourself to everyone in your life, but I also know that hiding big pieces of who you are for years is exhausting. It wears you down in ways you don't even notice until you finally get a taste of what it's like to be open. So, with the thunder kind of rumbling in the distance and the fireplace crackling right here, I'm going to scroll down and start reading their post. I'm going to take this one a little slower than usual. Thanks again for trusting me with stuff like this. Let's go ahead and get into exactly what they're planning to say, and the one reaction they're dreading the most. All right, so the title of this one is basically The Letter I Never Sent Until Now. And as I'm reading, I'm just going to slowly walk laps around the inside of the base, check the doors, maybe harvest the little indoor wheat patch so we've got something calm happening in the background. OP says they've kind of always known, in that quiet, background process way. They write that when they were around 11 or 12, they realised they weren't looking at people the way their friends were. Everyone else was talking about crushes on celebrities, and they were just faking it, picking a name so they didn't seem weird. At first they thought maybe they were just a late bloomer. Then in high school it stopped being a maybe and started feeling like a thing they couldn't ignore. They say, I'm queer. I use that word because it feels like a big enough umbrella for me. I've known that for at least a decade, and I've been pretending not to know for just as long. The reason they stayed quiet wasn't one big dramatic threat. It was 1,000 tiny comments. Their dad making lazy jokes about those people on TV. Their mum saying she'd be heartbroken if any of her kids had a hard life like that. Friends tossing around slurs in the hallway like it was nothing. Nothing exploded, but it also didn't feel safe. I think this is one of those things where silence can feel louder than an actual rule. They say no one ever sat them down and said, you're not allowed to be gay. But when every movie night came with a side of casual mockery, they got the message. They didn't want to disappoint anyone. They didn't want to be the reason family holidays got tense. So they learned to perform. They dated a couple of people they weren't really into. Smiled through questions about when they were going to find the right partner. They kept telling themselves, I'll deal with this later. After exams, after college, after I move out. There was always a later. The letter started as a notes app draft at 2 a.m. They wrote this long, messy paragraph to their mum, then deleted the whole thing. They tried again a week later, this time as an email. Save as draft, close laptop. repeat. They imagined every possible reaction, from "I love you, nothing changes," to getting kicked out, to that quiet, disappointed look they were most afraid of. Which one felt worse? As they're describing this, I'm just replanting seeds in the little farm, checking that the iron door is shut, doing that slow, satisfying Minecraft maintenance. They say they ended up with at least 12 versions of the same message. Some were way too clinical, like a school essay about their sexuality. Some were so emotional they couldn't read them back without crying. The moment of truth was stupidly ordinary. It's Tuesday night. They were sitting on their bed, phone in hand, heart racing so hard they could hear it in their ears, fingers shaking so much they kept hitting the wrong letters. They copied the latest draft into a text to the family group chat, of all places, because they knew if they picked one person, it would feel like choosing sides. They say, "I don't necessarily believe in perfect timing anymore. I just believed that if I didn't do it right then, I never would." They took a breath that felt way too small for what they were about to do. Read the message one last time. And for a second, everything went strangely calm, like the moment right before you jump into cold water. Then they hit send. Screen went grey, message whooshed away, and they just stared at it, waiting for the first 3 dots to appear. Those 3 dots are honestly the scariest part, because in that gap between sent and seen, your brain can run through like every possible version of your life, from "they hug me and everything is perfect" to "I get kicked out and never speak to them again." Alright, I want to pause on that for a second, because coming out is one of those things that sounds simple when people talk about it online, but in real life it can be huge and genuinely dangerous. Some of you are in homes or communities where you really don't know if you'll still have a bed or a phone or a relationship with your family afterward. That's not just nerves, that's actual safety. I'm definitely not someone that believes you owe the world your most vulnerable truths on a schedule. You don't owe your parents a coming out date. You don't owe your partner a perfectly worded label before you've even figured it out yourself. You're allowed to wait until you feel ready. You're allowed to only tell a couple trusted friends. You're allowed to never tell certain people if every instinct in your body is like, "Yeah, that's not safe for me." Let's go ahead and reinforce that idea visually too. I'm going to thicken these base walls so they're double stone instead of just this thin little layer, and then I'll add an extra door with a button on the inside only. From the outside it just looks like a regular cozy starter house, but underneath we'll carve out a tiny panic room, put a bed, a chest with food, maybe a shield and some tools. Nothing fancy, just enough that if things go bad, you've got a place to breathe. Because wanting honesty is different from demanding it, like you're entitled to someone else's pain. It's fair for a partner to say, "I want to understand you better," but it's not fair to say, "If you don't come out to your parents by next month, I'm leaving." That kind of ultimatum ignores the fact that your body is on the line, not theirs. It's easy for people who feel safe to be brave with your life. I don't necessarily think everyone who pushes like that is a villain. Sometimes it comes from fear or from wanting the relationship to feel more official. But your safety and your emotional well-being are not a group project. You get the final vote on when, how, and if you share this part of yourself. Okay, quick pattern interrupt while I put a little redstone torch in here so it feels like a secret bunker. The update to this story is coming, and I want to set expectations. It's not a perfect fairy tale where the parents instantly become allies and wave a pride flag, but it's also not the absolute worst case scenario people in the comments were bracing for. It lands in that messy middle space that real life usually lives in. So as we head into it, try to hold both things at once. The fear that was totally valid and the small pieces of freedom they still managed to claim. So this update picks up pretty soon after that, not like years later with a huge transformation arc, but just a couple days after they finally hit send on that message. In Minecraft time, I've just walked a slow lap around the base wall while you were listening, checking for any creepers that decided to spawn in the corners. Nothing dramatic. Just quiet patrols while real life is kind of doing the same thing in the background. OP says their mum read the message that same night. No immediate reply, just the little typing bubble popping up, disappearing, popping up again. Then nothing. They went to bed with that sick feeling in their stomach, and the next morning it was like business as usual. Good morning, how was your sleep? Don't forget your lunch. It's definitely weird when the world doesn't explode, but your brain still kind of expects it to. Later that evening, they finally sat down in the living room. TV on low, news in the background, and the mum just goes, "So, I read your message." Long pause. OP says it felt like the whole house held its breath. Then the classic line, "We love you, but this is a lot." Not yelling, not disowning, but also not exactly throwing a party either. While that's happening, I'm just standing on this little dock, fishing again. Cast, wait, reel in, repeat. Nothing explodes, but it also doesn't feel resolved. The dad's reaction was mostly silence. He asked one or two awkward questions, like he was reading from a script he didn't rehearse enough. Are you sure? Is this because of something that happened at school? That kind of thing. OP says they kept repeating, calmly, that this wasn't a phase, that they'd known for a while. I don't necessarily think the dad was trying to be cruel, but you can hear the confusion in those questions. The small details are what make this feel real. OP walked past the office later and saw their mom on the computer with a search tab open about their identity. Not yelling at a pastor, not posting a rant on Facebook, just quietly Googling terms she clearly didn't grow up with. Their younger sibling texted from upstairs. "Saw your message on Mum's phone. I love you. I'm on your side." That one line probably did more than the whole living room talk. At the same time, a close friend at school changed the subject when OP tried to bring it up. "Oh, cool. Anyway, did you finish the project?" It stung. It wasn't hateful. It was just avoidance, and sometimes that weird neutral space hurts almost as much. As they're telling this part, I'm slowly circling the base again, placing a few torches along the perimeter. It's that same vibe of, let's go ahead and make things a little safer, even if it's not perfect yet. OP says they feel this strange mix of relief and sadness now. The secret isn't sitting on their chest anymore. They can breathe. But it wasn't the big, warm movie moment either. I'm definitely not someone that believes every coming out has to be fireworks to be worthwhile. This is one of those things where not great, not terrible is still progress. They end the update by saying that even with the uncertainty, they feel more themselves than they ever have. And that's something they wouldn't trade, even if the road ahead is bumpy and slow. All right, I can already kind of hear the comments on this one in my head. A lot of you are probably typing something like, "I'm so proud of you. I don't even know you," which is honestly one of my favourite internet things. I think that's the wild contrast here. In their real life, the reaction was this very muted, "Okay, cool, but..." And then online, a bunch of strangers would absolutely be cheering for them. And both realities can exist at the same time. It's not the big movie parent speech, but it's also not, "Get out of my house, you're dead to me." Mixed reactions are still progress when you zoom out from the ideal and compare it to outright rejection. Let's go ahead and tuck in for the night here while we talk about that. I'm going to add a few more beds in this hallway, just make it look like a tiny hostel situation. Extra beds always make a base feel like it's expecting people. You know? Even if it's just villagers that will never actually sleep here. Some of you are definitely going to relate way more to the disappointment side. That feeling of, they said they love me, but it didn't sound like they like me, is really real. Nothing exploded, but it also didn't feel resolved. You're allowed to grieve the reaction you wish you'd gotten. You can be grateful they didn't disown you, and still be sad that they didn't run across the room and hug you. This is one of those things where two feelings can sit next to each other without cancelling out. I'm definitely not someone that believes you owe the world your most vulnerable truth at any cost, especially if you're young or financially dependent, or your family has already shown they can get scary when they're uncomfortable. If you're listening to this in a room where you have to keep your volume low so nobody hears, your safety comes first. Full stop. You can be honest with yourself quietly while you wait for your life to get bigger and safer. While I'm saying that, I'm going to put a little dining nook right here by the window. Couple of stairs as chairs, trapdoor table, maybe a flower pot in the middle. It's small, but it looks like a place where people could sit and just exist together. That's the kind of community I want for you. If you can't get that at home yet, you're allowed to find it in safer spaces, online or offline, where you don't have to add a but after every "I love you." Thanks again for everyone who's been sending stories like this, because when you line them up, patterns start to pop out. In a second, I want to zoom out from just this one coming out story and talk about what I keep seeing across a lot of these confessions. And there's one pattern in particular that might make you rethink a few relationships. All right, let's zoom out a little while we walk through what we've built tonight. I'm going to leave this room and just slowly wander down the hallway here. We started this video with crush drama, petty revenge, family secrets, people getting ghosted, anonymous kindness, and then these really vulnerable coming out stories. On paper, they look totally different. But when you actually sit with them, they're kind of all circling the same three fears. You've got people terrified of hurting someone they care about, people terrified of being judged if they say what they really think, and people who just really, really want to be seen and understood, even if they're not making the perfect choice. It's not usually like cartoon villains versus saints. It's your coworker who panicked and lied. It's the partner who shut down instead of saying, "I'm scared." It's the kid who stayed closeted 2 extra years because home didn't feel safe. Let's go ahead and duck down into the mine while we talk about that. This whole tunnel started as one little staircase, and then I kept branching off, following the iron, following the coal, making weird turns. A lot of these stories feel exactly like that. Nobody had a manual. They just followed whatever felt least painful in the moment, even if it meant ghosting someone or hiding a relationship or telling a half-truth to keep the peace. I'm definitely not someone that believes honesty is just say every thought immediately or you're fake. That sounds brave, but it can be selfish. Real honesty is messier. It's timing, it's safety, it's asking, can this person actually hear this right now? And it's also being honest with yourself about what you can live with. Can you live with never telling your friend you had a crush? Can you live with pretending that family comment didn't hurt you? All right, let's head back up and walk past the farm. You've got this calm little wheat field, the sugarcane, the animals just looping around. This is like the quiet, stable parts of your life that these big confessions poke holes in. Then we move past the decorated rooms, the cozy bedroom with the lanterns, the storage room that's way too organised, the little cabins out here. Each build is its own emotional space we visited tonight. The messy breakup corner, the I did a petty thing corner, the I finally told the truth cabin. This is one of those things where I don't necessarily think you need to go blow up your life tomorrow, but maybe just pick one tiny area where you could be 5% more honest. With yourself, with a partner, with a parent, whatever that looks like. No big speeches required, just a little less hiding. We're going to start winding down in a second. If you're somehow still awake, feel free to stay for a really soft outro, and I'll talk about how you can send in your own story for a future video, if you want to share without anyone knowing it's you. All right, let's go ahead and actually wind this world down a bit while we wind you down too. I'm going to let it turn to night one more time here. You can see the sun kind of sliding down behind that hill, and while that happens, I'm just going to do a really slow walk around the base. Nothing exciting, nothing stressful. Just checking that all the torches are lit, the fences are intact, and that any mobs are staying at a very comfortable distance on the other side of the light. Nothing exploded. But it also doesn't feel unresolved. We'll start over by the animal pens. I'll feed the cows, then the sheep, one by one. It's the same little animation, the same sound, just looping. This is one of those things that's almost like white noise once you've seen it a few times. I don't necessarily need to think about it, and you definitely don't need to either. If you zoned out 10 stories ago, that's completely fine. This video is here to be background comfort, not homework you have to keep up with. I'm going to harvest this little row of wheat and replant it, just slowly walking down the line. Click, replant, click, replant. It's repetitive on purpose. Minecraft has that ASMR thing built in where the sounds are predictable and the visuals barely change, and I think that's why a lot of people use videos like this to fall asleep or study. You're allowed to just let it blur together in your brain. If you're somehow still awake and actually listening, go ahead and check in with your body for a second. Maybe take a slightly deeper breath in and a longer breath out. Unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders away from your ears, maybe adjust your blanket or your pillow. I'll just top up these furnaces with some coal while you do that. Same motion, over and over. Open, add, close. Nothing you need to keep track of. I'm definitely not someone that believes you have to watch every second of a video to count as a viewer. If you fell asleep halfway through a relationship story, or you woke up in the middle of some petty neighbour drama, that's okay. You didn't miss an exam, you just missed me quietly crafting a couple of extra pickaxes for next time, and making sure this little base feels safe and settled. We'll take one last slow loop along the outer wall here, just checking the corners, placing a torch where it looks a little dark. Inside the fences is light and calm. Outside is just distant shapes we're not going to bother with tonight. Thanks again for hanging out in this tiny square world with me. In the next bit, I'll talk about how you can send in your own story and some small ways to support the channel if you want. But for now, we're just going to let this Minecraft night stay quiet and cozy and not ask anything from you at all. Alright, so before this world fully powers down for the night, I kind of want to look back at where we've been. We started with those crush confessions and secret "I like you but I'm terrified to say it out loud" moments. Wandered through messy family secrets and quiet resentments. Dipped into petty revenge that was just spicy enough to be satisfying, and then ended up in all that ghosted friendship grief and coming out courage. While all of that was happening, we were just slowly putting this little Minecraft place together. Nothing wild, nothing speedrun level, just mining a tunnel here, placing a lantern there, fixing the roof because I definitely forgot a block. It's not a huge base, but I think it matches the stories. Kind of imperfect, kind of cozy, and still getting built. I don't necessarily say this enough, but thanks again for trusting me with this stuff. Some of you are sending in stories about your partner, or your family, or like the one friend you thought would never leave, and that's not light. Whether you listen to every single detail or you just let the pickaxe sounds and my voice blur into background noise while you drifted off, I really appreciate you hanging out here. If you're sitting there thinking, I have a story like this, let's go ahead and talk about how you can send it in. You can drop it in the comments if you're comfortable, or if you want it to be fully anonymous, I have a form linked in the description. You don't have to use real names, and even if you do, I'm definitely not someone that believes in exposing people. I'll change details, ages, locations, whatever I need to, so you're not identifiable. But the heart of your story will stay the same. For engagement stuff, I always want to keep it low pressure. If you end up using this to fall asleep a lot, maybe like the video, or save it so you can find it again later. If you remember it in the morning, you can even comment the timestamp where you knocked out, so other people can jump straight to the really cozy parts. It's a small thing, but it actually helps a lot. Going forward, I'm thinking about doing some themed nights. Maybe an all-wholesome confessions episode while we just decorate and farm. Or a full petty drama night paired with organising chests, because that feels on brand. Or we could do deeper emotional stories like breakups and big life changes while we tackle a specific Minecraft project together. What kind of episode would you want to be part of? For now, I'm going to tuck my little character into this tiny starter house, close the door, and let the room stay dark except for that one soft torch. I'll leave the camera here for a bit so you can just listen to the quiet, and then the screen will fade out. Don't go anywhere just yet, though. The next story I'm planning might be the most unfiltered one we've read so far. Alright, if you're still kind of half awake and listening, this is the part where I'm just going to quietly wander around and let the game do most of the talking. I'll keep my voice really soft here, just topping up the furnaces. There we go. You'll probably hear more of the little sounds than anything I'm saying. The crackle of the furnace, the footsteps on the wood floor, that tiny click when I open a chest. Just checking the chests, making sure everything's where it should be. Nothing exciting, nothing stressful, just the usual base maintenance that you'd probably ignore if you were fully awake. I'm going to slowly walk down this hallway, let the footsteps change as we move from wood to stone. It's one of those things I really like about Minecraft, how even the tiny sounds are different. Soft wool, solid planks, little stone taps. No big jumps, no mobs, just quiet. Let's go ahead and peek out this window for a second. Just standing still here. You might hear the gentle ambient noise outside, maybe a cow in the distance or a little bit of wind. I don't necessarily need to explain anything right now. This is just background for your brain to idle to while you drift. I'm going to open this chest again and slowly move a few stacks around. Nothing important, just rearranging the chest, sliding blocks back and forth. No rush, no goal, just something for your ears to follow. If you're still awake, you might notice how repetitive and predictable it is. If you're already gone, that's kind of perfect. All right, walking back through the main room. Soft footsteps, tiny door sound. Maybe a sheep outside, maybe a chicken. Minecraft is definitely one of those games where the tiny noises end up feeling like white noise, if you listen long enough. I'm definitely not someone that believes you need constant talking to stay engaged, especially if you click this to fall asleep. Just checking the chests again. Little clicks, little opens and closes. I think your brain knows exactly what's coming next, and that predictability can be really calming. No new story, no big emotional thing, just the same safe base you've already seen. I'll move over to this corner and stand by the window for a bit, looking out at the night sky, letting the game hum in the background. Nothing exploded, but it also doesn't need to feel resolved. It just is. Toward the end here, I'm going to stop moving completely. Characters just standing in this well-lit room, door closed, no danger, looking out at a peaceful part of the base. You might still catch a furnace crackle or a chest sound, but even those are going to slow down. If you're somehow still awake, don't worry. We'll get into that next honest story soon. For now, though, I'm just going to let the room breathe and let the game sounds carry you the rest of the way down. Alright, so at this point, I'm not touching anything. No more mining, no more opening chests, no more little button clicks. I'm just going to walk us out onto this balcony and leave the camera here, looking out over this really calm little sunrise over the base. We've got the sky going from that deep blue into this soft orange. The torches are still kind of gently glowing around the farm, and the wheat is just barely moving. Nothing big is happening, nothing dramatic. It's just here, existing. I think this is one of those things where the world doesn't need any more input from me for the night. Let's go ahead and just let the game breathe on its own for a bit. I'm going to stop moving the mouse so the frame basically turns into a still picture. You might see a cow wander through or a bee float past the flowers, but it's going to be really slow, really small, like a screensaver that forgot it was supposed to be exciting. If you're still kind of awake, you'll probably start to notice the tiny stuff. The soft wind sound, maybe a distant zombie under a cave somewhere, the little birds in the Minecraft ambience. Nothing jumps out, nothing explodes, but it also doesn't feel empty. It's just enough to keep your brain from grabbing for a new story or a new update. I'm going to start bringing my voice down now, a little quieter each sentence. I don't necessarily want to be the last loud thing you hear before you fall asleep. So after a few more moments, I'll stop talking completely and just let the game sound sit here with you. If there's music playing for you, it should be really soft at this point, almost like you're overhearing someone else's playlist from another room. If not, it's just the Minecraft world doing its thing in the background. No new stories, no big reactions, no sudden outro. Just this calm shot over the base and the sky slowly getting brighter. I'm definitely not someone that believes you have to fall asleep at a certain time or in a certain way. But if this helped you even a little bit, I'm glad you were here. If you did drift off somewhere back in the village or during one of the relationship posts, that's totally fine too. Your brain probably clocked out right when it needed to. Thanks again for hanging out, for sending your honest stories, and for trusting me with this little corner of your night. I'm going to stop talking now and leave you with the quiet. No more words from here on out.